Grace, why are you looking at me like that? Because I finally understand something. Understand what? That the man who promised to protect me is the same man who tried to bury me. You're overreacting. No, Daniel. I survived. You think you can prove anything? I don't need to prove it to the world. I just needed you to know. I know. You were supposed to trust me. I trusted you with my heart. You handed me death instead. You're my wife, and you were my almost murderer. What do you want from me? Nothing. Because the day you tried to kill me was the day you lost me. You didn't finish the job, Daniel. Now I get to finish the story. Before we continue, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And don't forget to like and share and comment so you never miss the next explosive story. Daniel, stop the car right now! Grace's scream tore through the night as the black SUV swerved violently across the empty highway. Rain slammed against the windshield, blurring the road into streaks of white and red light. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned pale. You think I don't know? He shouted back, his voice shaking with fury. You think I didn't see the messages? What messages? Grace cried, clutching the dashboard as the car sped faster. Daniel, you're scaring me! Don't lie to me! His foot pressed harder on the accelerator. The engine roared. All those late nights, the secret calls, I know what you did. Grace's heart pounded violently against her ribs. I didn't do anything. Daniel, please, slow down! Instead of slowing, he yanked the wheel sharply. The SUV skidded across the slick pavement, spinning once, twice, before smashing through the guardrail. For one suspended, terrifying second, Grace felt nothing but weightlessness. Then gravity pulled them down. The world exploded into metal, glass, and screaming steel. Darkness swallowed her. Grace woke to the taste of blood in her mouth. Rain still poured, cold droplets hitting her face. She lay on wet grass near the overturned SUV, her ears ringing. Smoke curled from the crushed hood. Headlights flickered weakly before dying. Daniel, she whispered hoarsely. No answer. She tried to move and pain shot through her side. Somehow she had been thrown clear of the vehicle. Her vision blurred as she forced herself onto her elbows. The driver's door creaked open. Daniel stumbled out, alive. Relief flooded her, brief and foolish. He staggered toward her slowly, his face shadowed in the flashing lightning. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, but his gaze was clear. Too clear. You? Grace coughed. We need help. My phone? He didn't kneel to help her. He didn't look worried. Instead, he stood over her with a strange, hollow expression. You survived, he said quietly. Grace's stomach dropped. What does that mean? He looked back at the wrecked SUV, then at her again. Something shifted in his eyes. Something cold. It was supposed to be quick. The words struck harder than the crash. Grace froze. Daniel, you weren't supposed to live. The rain felt like ice against her skin. You tried to kill me, she whispered. His jaw tightened. You left me no choice. No choice? Her voice broke. I loved you. He laughed bitterly. Loved me while planning to take everything. I don't know what you're talking about. The life insurance, Grace, he snapped. The policy you increased 6 months ago. Her mind reeled. That was for security. For us. For us, he barked. Or for you and him. There is no him. Daniel's breathing grew uneven. I saw you at the cafe. With that man. My lawyer, she cried. I was filing the adoption papers, Daniel. I wanted it to be a surprise. Silence crashed between them louder than thunder. What? He asked slowly. We've been trying for years, she sobbed. I thought if I handled the paperwork first, we could finally have the family we wanted. Daniel stared at her, the rain washing blood down his temple. You're lying. I'm not. Tears mixed with rain on her face. Check my bag. The documents are there. For a moment, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Then suspicion hardened again. Convenient, he muttered. Grace felt something inside her shatter. You really believe I betrayed you? I saw the messages, he said again, but now there was doubt creeping into his voice. What messages? From an unknown number, saying you were planning to leave me, that you were going to ruin me. Grace's breath caught. That's insane. They had proof. What proof? Bank statements. Copies of the insurance policy, photos of you and that man. Her mind raced. Someone had set this up. Daniel, think, she pleaded. Why would I plan your death when I've spent years praying for our future? His expression twisted with confusion and rage battling inside him. Before he could respond, distant sirens wailed through the storm. Grace closed her eyes in relief. Daniel stepped back, and for a terrifying second, she thought he might finish what he started before help arrived. But he didn't. Instead, he whispered something she barely heard over the sirens. "If you're lying, I'll make you regret surviving." 3 weeks later, Grace lay in a hospital bed staring at the ceiling. Her ribs were cracked, her shoulder dislocated, bruises painted her skin like dark memories. Daniel had only minor injuries. He visited once. He stood at the doorway, silent. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "You tried to kill me," she replied coldly. His jaw clenched. "I was manipulated." "By who?" "I don't know." That was the problem. Neither did she. But someone had carefully planted seeds of destruction in their marriage, someone who knew about the insurance, someone who knew about the adoption, someone who wanted them destroyed, and someone who had almost succeeded. Grace turned her head to look at him. "Daniel," she said softly, "if you ever come near me in anger again, I won't hesitate." "Hesitate to do what?" he asked. Her eyes hardened. "To survive." That night, Grace couldn't sleep. The crash replayed over and over in her mind. The look on his face, the cold calculation, you weren't supposed to live. She reached for her phone and scrolled through her email. There it was, a message she hadn't noticed before the accident from an anonymous sender. Subject, "He knows." Her pulse quickened as she opened it. Inside was a single line. "This is only the beginning." Her hands trembled. This wasn't over. Someone wanted blood. And if Daniel had been manipulated once, he could be manipulated again. Grace stared into the darkness of her hospital room and made a silent vow. If someone was playing with her life, she would find them, and she would destroy them. The first time Grace stepped back into the house, she felt like she was walking into a crime scene. Not because of blood, not because of broken glass, but because the air still held the memory of betrayal. Daniel stood in the living room when she entered. He didn't move to help her with her suitcase. He didn't ask how she felt. He simply watched her. "You're back," he said quietly. "This is still my house," Grace replied. A storm brewed behind his eyes. "Our house." Grace dropped her bag near the staircase. "You lost the right to say 'our' when you drove that car off the bridge." His jaw flexed. "I said I was manipulated. And I said you chose to believe it." Silence. Heavy. Tense. Electric. "You think this is easy for me?" Daniel snapped suddenly. "You think I don't replay that night in my head?" "I don't care what you replay," she shot back. "I care that you meant it." His voice dropped, dangerously low. "You don't know what I saw." "Then show me." That stopped him. She stepped closer despite the pain in her ribs. "Show me the messages, the proof. If you want redemption, start there." Daniel hesitated, then pulled out his phone. He unlocked it and handed it to her. Grace's fingers trembled as she scrolled. There were screenshots of bank transfers, real ones, increases in insurance coverage, photographs of her meeting her lawyer, but the messages were fabricated. Texts from an unknown contact. "She's going to ruin you. She plans to leave after the policy clears. Act before she does." Grace's heart pounded. "Daniel," she said slowly, "these are edited." His eyes narrowed. "What?" "The timestamps are wrong. The formatting is off. These are manipulated screenshots." "You're saying someone hacked me?" "Yes." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Why would someone do that?" Grace's voice turned cold. "Who benefits if we destroy each other?" He looked at her sharply, and in that moment, something clicked. "Victoria," they both said at the same time. Daniel's sister. Victoria had always hated Grace, always smiled too sweetly, always lingered too long when Daniel wasn't looking. "She warned me about you," Daniel admitted quietly. Grace folded her arms. "Of course she did." "She said you were too ambitious, too calculated." Grace laughed bitterly. "That's rich coming from a woman who tried to flirt with her sister's husband at our wedding." Daniel stiffened. "That never happened." Grace stepped closer, her voice dropping. "It did, and you were too blind to see it." The tension between them shifted. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was something deeper, something raw, a mix of resentment and unresolved desire. "You think she wants me?" Daniel asked. "I think she wants what I have," Grace replied. "And what's that? You." For a moment, the air thickened. Daniel stepped closer now, their bodies inches apart. "You're still my wife," he murmured. Grace's breath caught despite herself. "You tried to kill me, and I regret it," he said fiercely. "Every second." His hand brushed her arm. She should have pulled away. She didn't. The heat between them was toxic, dangerous, fueled by anger and hurt and years of shared intimacy. "You don't get to touch me," she whispered. "Then tell me to stop." Her heart betrayed her body. Memories flooded in, laughter, passion, nights wrapped together whispering dreams. But then, the crash. "You weren't supposed to live." Grace shoved him hard. Pain shot through her ribs, but she didn't care. "You don't get redemption through desire," she said sharply. "You earn it." Daniel's eyes darkened. "And how do I do that?" "Help me destroy the person who set this up." That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She went downstairs for water and froze when she saw Daniel sitting in the dark living room, staring at his phone. "You can't sleep either?" she asked. "No." She hesitated, then sat across from him. "Tell me something honestly," she said. "What?" "When you drove off that bridge, did you hesitate?" Daniel's silence was answer enough. "Yes," he said finally, "for a second." Her chest tightened, but the anger was louder. She swallowed hard. "You let anger win." "Yes." "And what if it happens again?" He looked at her intensely. "It won't. You can't promise that." "I can if I know the truth." Grace leaned forward. "Then listen carefully. I never betrayed you. I never stopped loving you. But if I find out you're lying now..." Her voice turned ice cold. "I won't survive quietly next time." Daniel studied her like he was seeing someone new. She wasn't the soft, forgiving wife anymore. She was sharper, harder, and that frightened him. The next day, Grace drove to Victoria's house. She didn't tell Daniel. She wanted to see her reaction firsthand. Victoria opened the door wearing silk and a smile. "Grace," she purred. "You look alive." Grace stepped inside without invitation. "You tried to destroy my marriage," she said bluntly. Victoria laughed. "You give me too much credit. You sent the messages. Proof?" Grace stepped closer. "I don't have it yet." Victoria's eyes flickered, just slightly. "But I will." The sweetness vanished from Victoria's face. "You think Daniel would choose you over blood?" Grace smiled slowly. "He already did." Victoria's jaw tightened. "You're not as secure as you pretend to be," Victoria hissed. Grace leaned in close enough to feel her sister-in-law's breath. "You made one mistake." "Oh? You didn't make sure I died." Victoria's expression faltered, and there it was. Guilt. Fear. Grace straightened. "I'm not the woman you thought I was," she said calmly. "And now, I'm angry." Victoria forced a laugh. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Grace walked out without another word. But her hands were shaking once she reached the car. This was bigger than jealousy. Someone had orchestrated financial documents, hacked phones, manipulated evidence. Victoria might be involved, but was she the mastermind? That night, Grace returned home to find Daniel in the kitchen. "You went to see her," he said immediately. "You're tracking me now?" "I was worried." She studied him carefully. "She reacted." "How?" She didn't deny it convincingly. Daniel slammed his fist on the counter. "If she did this..." "What?" Grace challenged. "You'll protect me this time?" His eyes burned. "I'll protect what's mine." She stepped close again, the tension crackling. "I'm not property, Daniel." "No," he said, voice rough. "You're my wife." "And you almost killed me." Their faces were inches apart. Pain, desire, fury, history, all colliding. "Why do you still stay?" he asked quietly. Grace's voice broke just slightly. "Because I need the truth." Tut. A long silence passed. Then Daniel spoke the words that changed everything. "There's something I didn't tell you." Her stomach dropped. "What?" "Before the accident, I transferred money." "To who?" His hesitation was deadly. "Victoria." Grace felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "How much?" "Enough." "For what?" she demanded. He looked at her with guilt written across his face. "She said she had proof that she'd expose you, ruin you publicly." "So you paid her?" Grace whispered. "Yes." "And then?" "She said it wasn't enough." The room felt suffocating. "So you decided death was cheaper?" Grace's voice trembled with rage. Daniel looked shattered. "I wasn't thinking clearly." "No," she said coldly. "You were thinking exactly clearly." He stepped toward her, but she backed away. "If she blackmailed you once," Grace said slowly, "she'll do it again." Daniel's face hardened. "Not this time." Grace tilted her head. "And what are you willing to do?" Something dangerous entered his eyes. "Whatever it takes." Grace realized something terrifying in that moment. The man who had tried to kill her was also capable of killing for her, and she wasn't sure which was worse. As Grace lay in bed that night, staring into the darkness, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her pulse quickened. She answered. A distorted voice spoke softly. "You should have died in that crash." Her blood ran cold. Who is this? A low chuckle. Your husband is only the beginning. The line went dead. Grace sat upright, heart racing. This wasn't just Victoria. This was bigger. Someone else was pulling strings, and they weren't finished. Grace looked toward the bedroom door where Daniel slept in the guest room. Revenge was no longer about anger. It was about survival, and if someone wanted war, she would give them hell. Grace didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't wake Daniel. Instead, she walked slowly to the guest room door and stood there, staring at it in the dark. You should have died in that crash. The voice replayed in her head. Her husband had tried to kill her. Now someone else wanted her dead. And somehow, she felt calmer than she had in weeks, because fear had finally burned itself into something else. Rage. She opened the guest room door without knocking. Daniel was awake, sitting up, as if he hadn't slept either. You heard it too? He asked immediately. Grace's eyes narrowed. He called you? Daniel held up his phone. Unknown number, same time stamp. Her stomach twisted. What did he say? That I failed. Silence fell like a blade between them. Grace stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. Failed at what? She demanded. Daniel's jaw tightened. At finishing it. The words hung heavy in the air. Grace walked toward him slowly, not afraid, not fragile, furious. You see what you did, she whispered. You opened a door for someone. Daniel stood up. I was manipulated. You were weak. That hit him. His eyes darkened, something dangerous flickering beneath the surface. You think I don't know that? He shot back. You think I don't hate myself for that night? Hate isn't enough, Grace snapped. I need control. He stepped closer. You have it. Do I? She challenged, because last time I checked, I was the one thrown from a moving car. His breathing grew heavier. You're not weak anymore, Grace. She let out a bitter laugh. I was never weak. Their faces were inches apart now. The tension between them wasn't just anger anymore. It was combustible. You're different, Daniel murmured. I had to be. Lightning flashed outside the window, illuminating them in cold white light. I almost lost you, he said quietly. You tried to. His hand lifted slightly, as if he wanted to touch her, but he stopped himself. Don't, she warned. I wasn't going to. Good. But neither of them moved away. The space between them pulsed with history. Years of marriage, nights of whispered dreams, fights, passion, regret. You still feel it, Daniel said softly. Grace swallowed. Feel what? Us. She hated that he was right. Her body betrayed her anger. Her pulse quickened just from his proximity. You don't get to talk about us, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier sharpness. Why are you in here, Grace? He asked quietly. Because I'm afraid, because I'm angry, because I don't want to be alone. Instead, she said, because someone wants us divided, and I refuse to give them that. Daniel studied her carefully. So what do we do? Grace's eyes hardened. We set a trap. The next morning, Grace did something unexpected. She invited Victoria over. Daniel nearly exploded. Are you insane? He demanded. She thinks I'm fragile, Grace replied calmly. Let her keep thinking that. Victoria arrived wearing white, as if attending a funeral. How brave of you, she said sweetly when Grace opened the door. I would have needed months to recover. Grace smiled coldly. I heal quickly. Daniel stayed silent in the background, watching his sister carefully. They sat in the living room. Polite, tense, predatory. I heard about the phone calls, Victoria said casually. How terrifying. Grace tilted her head. Funny. Only 3 people knew about that. Victoria's smile faltered for half a second. Daniel caught it. Are you accusing me of something? Victoria asked. Grace leaned forward slightly. I'm saying someone wants me dead. And you think it's me? Victoria laughed softly. Grace, if I wanted you gone, I wouldn't need a car accident. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Both women looked at him. You've been manipulating me for months, Daniel said, voice low and shaking with anger. The fake proof, the blackmail. Victoria's eyes widened, but not with guilt, with outrage. You actually believe her? She hissed. I saw the edits, Grace replied smoothly. You underestimated me. Victoria stood abruptly. You think you've won? She spat. You have no idea what you're standing in. Grace rose too, ignoring the pain in her ribs. Enlighten me. Victoria's gaze flicked between them. You think this is about jealousy? She said quietly. You think I care about your pathetic marriage? Then what? Daniel demanded. Victoria's lips curved into something darker than a smile. You were never the target. The room went silent. Grace felt the shift immediately. What does that mean? She asked slowly. Victoria stepped closer to Grace. You married into something you don't understand. Daniel looked genuinely confused. Victoria, what are you talking about? But she was staring at Grace. Did you ever ask about the company before the merger? She asked. Grace's blood ran cold. The merger? Daniel's family company had merged with a powerful investment firm 2 years ago. Grace had handled some of the legal paperwork. Who owns the controlling shares now? Victoria whispered. Grace's mind raced. Daniel does, she said carefully. Victoria laughed softly. Not anymore. Daniel's face went pale. What? Victoria turned to her brother. You signed documents the night before the accident. Remember, I told you it was for restructuring. Daniel's breathing grew uneven. No. Grace's stomach twisted. What did he sign? She demanded. Victoria's smile widened. Everything. Silence detonated. You forged it, Daniel whispered. No, Victoria said calmly. You signed willingly. Grace's mind snapped into clarity. The manipulation, the pressure, the anger. It wasn't just about their marriage. It was about control. You used our collapse as leverage, Grace said slowly. Victoria clapped softly. Finally. Daniel lunged forward, grabbing his sister's arm. You stole my company? Victoria's voice turned ice cold. It was never yours. Grace stepped between them. Who's behind you? She demanded. Victoria's eyes flickered. There it was again. Fear. You're playing a bigger game, Grace continued, and whoever it is, they're the one who made the call. Victoria jerked her arm free. You should have stayed dead, she whispered to Grace. Then she walked out. The door slammed. Daniel stood frozen. I signed everything? He asked hoarsely. Grace turned toward him slowly. Yes. And you knew? I suspected something. He looked at her like he didn't recognize her. You didn't tell me. You weren't stable enough to hear it, she replied coldly. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, realization. You're not reacting like a victim, he said quietly. I'm not one. Grace walked to the window and watched Victoria's car disappear. You asked why I stayed, she said without turning around. Daniel remained silent. I stayed because I knew something was wrong before the crash, she continued. The numbers didn't add up. The share transfers were hidden inside shell accounts. Daniel's breath caught. You were investigating? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? She finally looked at him. Because I didn't know if I could trust you. The truth cut deeper than any accusation. Daniel stepped back like she'd struck him. Grace's voice softened, but only slightly. Now I know someone bigger is involved, someone powerful enough to orchestrate this. And the call? He asked. That wasn't Victoria. No. Grace's eyes darkened. That was the real enemy. That night, the tension between them changed again. Not just heat. Not just anger. Alliance. Dangerous alliance. Daniel stood behind Grace as she worked on her laptop, tracing financial trails. You're incredible, he murmured quietly. I'm focused, she corrected. His hand hovered near her shoulder again. This time, she didn't move away. Not because she forgave him, but because war required proximity. You still don't fully trust me, he said. No, she admitted. Do you want to? Grace closed her laptop slowly. She turned in her chair to face him. I want the truth, she said softly. After that, we'll see. He leaned down slightly, their faces close enough to feel each other's breath. If I prove myself, he asked quietly, will you ever look at me the same? Grace held his gaze. I won't look at you the same. His heart seemed to drop. She continued, I'll look at you stronger. The air between them ignited, but this time it wasn't reckless. It was controlled, measured, explosive, but contained. Outside, another storm began to gather. Inside the house, something far more dangerous was forming. Not just revenge. Not just betrayal. Power. And Grace was no longer the woman thrown from a car. She was the woman who survived it, and someone was about to learn what that meant. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. Grace stood in Daniel's father's old office, staring at the portrait that hung above the fireplace. The late Edward Hale, powerful, composed, untouchable even in death. You never liked me, she murmured to the empty room. Daniel leaned against the doorway behind her. He didn't like anyone, he replied quietly. That's not true. Grace turned to face him. He respected power. Daniel's jaw tightened. And you think this is about him? Grace walked to the massive oak desk and ran her fingers along its surface. Victoria said I married into something I didn't understand. And she wasn't talking about you. Daniel exhaled slowly. My father's company was aggressive. Ruthless, even. No, Grace corrected softly. It was strategic. She opened one of the desk drawers. Locked. Daniel stepped forward, pulling a small keychain from his pocket. "You still keep the keys?" she asked. "He was still my father." The drawer clicked open. Inside were old files, contracts, hard copies of mergers that predated Grace's time in the company. She flipped through them carefully. Her eyes slowed, then stopped. "What is it?" Daniel asked. Grace held up a document, a merger agreement from 3 years ago, signed by Edward Hale, and a second name, Gabriel Voss. Daniel's expression darkened immediately. "No." Grace looked up. "You know him." Daniel's silence was confirmation. "Daniel." "He was my father's rival," he said finally. "They hated each other." Grace's mind started moving fast. "Where is he now?" "Disappeared after the merger, sold off most of his assets." Grace's pulse quickened. "Or moved them." Daniel stepped closer. "You think he's behind this?" "Who benefits from destabilizing you?" she asked calmly. "From forcing you to sign away control?" Daniel's breathing changed. "Gabriel lost everything because of my father. And now," Grace whispered, "he wants everything back." 2 nights later, Grace stood in a dimly lit underground parking garage. Alone. Daniel had argued for hours. "You're not meeting him alone." "Yes, I am. It's dangerous." She turned to him then, eyes steady. "So was marrying you." The words had hit harder than she intended, but she didn't apologize. A black sedan pulled into the garage and stopped 10 feet away. The driver's door opened slowly, and Gabriel Voss stepped out. Mid-50s, sharp suit, calm smile, eyes that held no warmth. He clapped softly. "I must say," he said smoothly, "I expected fear." Grace crossed her arms. "You orchestrated an attempted murder. That's not impressive. It's desperate." Gabriel chuckled. "I didn't touch your car. You manipulated my husband." "Ah," he smiled. "That part was easier than expected." Daniel stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Gabriel's eyebrows lifted slightly. "I assumed you'd stay home, Daniel." "I'm done being manipulated," Daniel replied coldly. Gabriel studied him. "You always were weaker than your father." Daniel lunged forward, but Grace grabbed his arm. "No," she whispered. Gabriel's smile widened. "There it is, the control. Edward chose well when he allowed you into the company, Grace." "I wasn't chosen," she said calmly. "I earned it." Gabriel nodded approvingly. "Yes, you did." Daniel looked between them, confused. "You knew about her before I did?" he asked. Gabriel tilted his head. "Of course." Grace's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Daniel demanded. Gabriel's voice lowered. "Your father wanted someone intelligent beside you, someone who could manage what you couldn't." The implication burned. Daniel turned slowly toward Grace. "You knew?" Grace met his gaze. "Your father approached me before we were even engaged." Silence. "He wanted to secure the company's future," she continued. "He believed you were too impulsive." Daniel stepped back like she'd struck him. "So this marriage was real," she snapped. "For me." Gabriel's soft laughter echoed in the garage. "How touching." Grace turned sharply toward him. "You lost control of your empire because Edward outplayed you," she said. "So you targeted his son." "Not just his son," Gabriel corrected, "his legacy. And you thought tearing apart a marriage was efficient?" "I thought," Gabriel replied smoothly, "that emotional instability would accelerate legal mistakes." Daniel's fists clenched. "You blackmailed me." "I nudged you," Gabriel said calmly. The anger was already there. Grace's eyes burned. "You nearly killed me." Gabriel's gaze shifted to her, assessing. "And yet here you stand." He stepped closer. "You fascinate me, Grace." "Careful," Daniel warned. Gabriel ignored him. "You survived the crash," he continued. "You saw through Victoria. You traced shell accounts faster than my own analysts expected." Grace's pulse remained steady. "You underestimated me." "Yes," Gabriel admitted softly, "and I dislike doing that twice." Daniel stepped between them. "This ends now." Gabriel looked almost amused. "Oh, Daniel, this only ends one way." "And how's that?" Grace asked. "With control restored." "Yours," she challenged, "eventually." Grace smiled slowly. "You're already losing." Gabriel's eyes flickered. She saw it. Tiny, but real. "You relied on Daniel's instability," she continued calmly, "but you didn't account for reconciliation." Daniel looked at her sharply. She didn't look at him. "United," she said quietly, "we're far more dangerous than divided." Gabriel studied them both now, calculating. "You think partnership will save you?" he asked softly. "No," Grace replied. "It will bury you." Later that night, the silence between Grace and Daniel felt heavier than ever. "You knew my father approached you," he said quietly in the kitchen. "Yes, and you didn't tell me." You were insecure enough as it was. He flinched. Was I just a strategic move to you? Grace stepped closer, her voice softer but firm. No. Then what was I? She placed her hand against his chest. You were the risk. He searched her eyes. Now you're the liability. The words should have angered him. Instead, they ignited something else. You still chose to stay, he said. Yes. Why? She looked at him long and hard because beneath the manipulation, beneath the anger, you're not your father. And that's supposed to comfort me? It means you can change. His hand lifted slowly, brushing against her wrist. You're not afraid of me anymore. No, she replied honestly. Why? Her eyes darkened. Because if you ever try to hurt me again, I won't survive. His breath caught. You destroy me. Yes, the heat between them wasn't reckless anymore. It was sharpened. Two survivors, two predators forced into alliance. Gabriel won't stop, Daniel said finally. I know. He'll escalate. So will I. Daniel studied her like he was seeing the full extent of who she had become. You're terrifying, he murmured. Grace leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I had to be. The next morning, the news broke. An internal investigation had been opened into the Hale-Voss merger, financial irregularities, hidden transfers. Grace stood in front of the television, watching Gabriel's name scroll across the screen. Daniel looked at her. You did that? She didn't deny it. You traced his offshore accounts, he said slowly. You leaked them. I nudged him, she replied calmly. A slow smile formed on Daniel's face. Remind me never to betray you again. Grace turned toward him. You won't get a second chance. Their phones buzzed simultaneously. Unknown number. They looked at each other before answering. Gabriel's voice came through, calm but thinner now. You've made this personal. Grace smiled faintly. It always was. You think exposure scares me? No, she said quietly, but loss of control does. Silence on the other end. You're more like Edward than you realize, Gabriel said. Grace's expression didn't change. That's where you're wrong, she replied. I don't destroy from pride. And what do you destroy from? She glanced at Daniel. Purpose. The line went dead. Daniel exhaled slowly. This isn't over. Grace walked toward the window, watching the storm clouds gather again. No, she agreed softly. But now. Her reflection in the glass didn't look like a victim. It looked like a strategist. Now we're the hunters. The retaliation came at dawn. Grace was still in bed when Daniel's phone began vibrating relentlessly on the nightstand. He grabbed it, eyes narrowing as he read the notification. What is it? Grace asked, already sensing the shift in his breathing. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he handed her the phone. Headline, Hale Enterprises under criminal review, CEO implicated in fraud scheme. Grace sat upright instantly. That's impossible, she said. Daniel's voice was hollow. They're saying I approved offshore transfers, that I authorized illegal acquisitions. Grace's mind moved fast. No, she whispered. This isn't just retaliation. This is framing. Daniel let out a humorless laugh. Gabriel's counterattack. Grace threw the blanket aside and stood. No, she said again, firmer this time. This is someone inside. Daniel's eyes snapped toward her. Inside? Yes, these documents, these approvals, they required internal access codes, personal ones. Daniel went still. You think I did it? Grace looked at him sharply. If you did, you'd never be stupid enough to leave a digital trail this obvious. He exhaled. Then who? Grace's stomach twisted as a thought surfaced. Who else has your executive clearance? Daniel hesitated. Only one other person. Say it. He swallowed. Marcus. Marcus Reed, Daniel's closest friend, best man at their wedding. Chief Financial Officer of Hale Enterprises, the man who had sat at their dinner table dozens of times, the man who had comforted Grace in the hospital, the man who had looked Daniel in the eye and said, I've got your back. Grace felt something icy crawl down her spine. Call him, she said quietly. Daniel dialed. It rang and went to voicemail. Daniel tried again, straight to voicemail. Grace's voice was calm, too calm. He's not going to answer. Daniel stared at the phone. No, not Marcus. Grace stepped closer. You said Gabriel nudged you, pushed your anger, fed your doubts. Daniel nodded slowly. What if Marcus did the same? Daniel shook his head immediately. No, Marcus helped me through everything, even after the crash. Grace's eyes sharpened, especially after the crash. The implication landed, hard. Daniel backed away slightly. You think he wanted us divided too? Grace didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to her laptop and began pulling up internal access logs. Her fingers moved fast. Daniel, she said quietly, when you transferred money to Victoria, who advised you on how to structure it? Daniel's breathing slowed. Marcus, when you signed the restructuring documents? Marcus reviewed them. When you panicked about the insurance policy? He told me it looked suspicious, Daniel whispered. Grace stopped typing. The room felt suffocating. He was feeding your fear, she said softly. Daniel's voice cracked. No. Grace turned the screen toward him. Look. On the screen was a digital log. Marcus Reed's executive credentials, accessing Daniel's approval account. 3 days before the accident, Daniel's face drained of color. He cloned my authorization. Grace nodded slowly, and planted fraudulent transfers under your name. Daniel staggered back like someone had punched him. Why? Grace's jaw tightened. Because he wasn't working for you. The confrontation happened that evening. Marcus walked into Daniel's office like nothing was wrong. Hey, he said casually, I've been trying to reach you. Daniel punched him. Hard. Marcus crashed into the desk, stunned. You set me up? Daniel roared. Marcus wiped blood from his lip and laughed. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't defensive. It was cold. You finally figured it out. Grace stepped into the room. Marcus's eyes flickered toward her. And you, he said softly, you're even sharper than I expected. Daniel grabbed him by the collar. Why? Marcus didn't struggle. Because you were never meant to sit in that chair. Daniel's grip tightened. I built this company. No, Marcus corrected calmly. Your father built it. The words cut deep, and he knew you'd ruin it. Daniel froze. Grace stepped closer. What are you talking about? She demanded. Marcus smiled faintly. You think Gabriel orchestrated this alone? Grace's stomach dropped. No. Marcus leaned back in the chair as if enjoying the moment. Gabriel hates your family, he said to Daniel. But hate doesn't build strategy, it builds chaos. Daniel's voice shook. Spit it out. Marcus's eyes shifted to Grace. Your father approached me before he died. The world tilted. What? He didn't trust you, Marcus said plainly. He thought you were reckless, emotional. Grace felt Daniel stiffen beside her. So he recruited you? She asked quietly. Yes. To spy? Daniel demanded. To stabilize, Marcus corrected. To ensure continuity. Daniel's laugh was broken. So you sabotaged me? Marcus's voice hardened. I protected the company. By framing me for fraud? Daniel shouted. Marcus stood up slowly. You were bleeding money with emotional decisions. The merger? A disaster. The expansion plan? Naive. You were my friend, Daniel yelled. Marcus met his gaze without flinching. I was loyal to the company. Grace stepped forward. And to Gabriel? Marcus's silence answered. Daniel stared at him in disbelief. You were working with him. Strategically, Marcus said smoothly. Grace's eyes burned. You manipulated Daniel's paranoia, fed him fake evidence, helped fracture our marriage. Marcus looked at her almost admiringly. You were the unpredictable variable. Daniel grabbed him again. You almost got her killed. Marcus's voice dropped. I didn't tell you to drive off that bridge. Daniel froze. But I knew you might, Marcus continued calmly. You're impulsive when angry. The truth hit like a bomb. Grace looked at Daniel slowly. You knew he had a temper, she said softly. Marcus nodded. And you exploited it. Yes, Daniel released him slowly. You used me as a weapon. Marcus adjusted his suit jacket. You were always one. The silence that followed was suffocating. Grace stepped closer to Marcus, her voice icy. You wanted control of Hale Enterprises. Yes, and you think you deserve it? I know I do. Grace's eyes narrowed. You underestimated one thing. Marcus tilted his head. What's that? Me. Marcus smiled faintly. I didn't underestimate you. Grace's pulse quickened. What do you mean? Marcus stepped closer to her, lowering his voice. I studied you long before Gabriel did. Daniel stiffened. Stay away from her. Marcus ignored him. You're ambitious, Grace. Controlled, calculating. Grace didn't move. And, she asked coldly, you're wasted beside him. Daniel lunged again, but Grace held him back this time. No, she said quietly. She stepped forward herself. You think I'm wasted? Marcus's voice softened dangerously. You could run this empire better than either of them. Grace felt Daniel's stare burning into her. Are you offering me something? She asked carefully. Marcus's smile deepened. Partnership. Daniel went still. Grace, he said slowly, don't even... Marcus continued smoothly. Gabriel wants control. I want sustainability. You want power and security. Grace's heart pounded, not from temptation, but from clarity. You think I'd betray my husband? She asked. Marcus's gaze flicked to Daniel. He already betrayed you. The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel's voice broke. Grace, Marcus leaned closer. You deserve someone who doesn't try to kill you. The silence felt endless. Grace turned slowly toward Daniel. His face was pale, vulnerable, ashamed. I did try, Daniel whispered. The honesty hurt more than denial ever could. Grace looked back at Marcus. You're right, she said softly. Daniel's breath stopped. Marcus's smile widened slightly. I do deserve better. Daniel's chest rose sharply. But not you, Grace finished. Marcus's expression shifted, just slightly. You think he won't break again? Marcus pressed. Grace's voice turned sharp as steel. He might. Daniel flinched. But at least I know his weakness, she continued. And yours? Marcus didn't answer. Grace stepped closer, her voice lowering. You believe loyalty can be replaced with efficiency. Marcus's eyes darkened. And it can't? No, she replied softly, because loyalty makes people irrational. Daniel looked at her in confusion. And irrational people, she finished, do unpredictable things. Marcus's jaw tightened. Grace smiled faintly. You're too controlled, Marcus. Daniel's breathing steadied as understanding dawned. Grace continued. You planned every angle, every reaction, every financial move. Marcus's silence was tense. But you didn't account for emotional survival, she said. You didn't account for love twisted into vengeance. Daniel stared at her. Marcus's calm facade cracked just a little. You're making a mistake, he warned. Grace's eyes gleamed. No, she stepped back. You are. Security flooded the office seconds later. Marcus looked at her sharply. You recorded this, he realized. Grace's expression didn't change. Every word. Daniel's eyes widened. You, she glanced at him briefly. Insurance. Marcus was dragged away, still composed but no longer confident. As the door closed behind him, silence fell. Daniel turned to Grace slowly. You considered it, he said quietly. Considered what? His offer. Grace didn't lie. For a second. The truth hit hard. Daniel swallowed. And, she stepped closer to him. I don't need a new partner, she said. His eyes searched hers. I need a stronger one. The words weren't forgiveness, but they weren't rejection either. Daniel's voice was rough. I don't deserve you. No, she agreed calmly. You don't. He flinched. But you can earn me. His breath caught. How? Grace's gaze hardened. By becoming dangerous for the right reasons. Outside, sirens echoed faintly as Marcus was taken away. The war wasn't over. Gabriel was still out there, but now the pieces were clear. The betrayal had come from within, from friendship, from blood, from ambition. Daniel looked at Grace like he was seeing her fully for the first time. You're not surviving anymore, he said quietly. No, she replied. She walked toward the window, watching the city lights flicker below. I'm conquering. And somewhere in the darkness beyond those lights, Gabriel Voss was preparing his final move. Gabriel didn't wait long. He never did. The strike came at 2:17 a.m. Grace woke to the sound of shattering glass. Not downstairs, not at the front door. In their bedroom. She rolled out of bed instantly as something crashed against the wall where her head had been seconds before. Daniel was already up. What the hell? Another crash. A brick. Wrapped in paper. Daniel grabbed it first. Grace snatched the note tied around it. 3 words. You chose wrong. Daniel's jaw tightened. He's escalating, he said quietly. Grace walked to the shattered window, staring into the dark street below. No, she replied. He's losing control. Daniel turned sharply. Someone just threw a brick into our bedroom. Yes, she said calmly, and that means he's angry. Daniel stepped closer. Grace, this isn't corporate maneuvering anymore. She turned slowly to face him. It never was. The next morning they met Gabriel face to face. Not by invitation, by force. Grace walked into Gabriel's downtown office unannounced. Daniel right behind her. The receptionist tried to stop them. Daniel didn't slow down. Gabriel was standing by the window when they entered. He didn't look surprised. He looked disappointed. I expected more composure, Gabriel said smoothly. Grace didn't sit. You threw a brick into my house. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Did I? Daniel stepped forward. Don't play games. Gabriel turned slowly. You humiliated my partner. You had Marcus arrested. He confessed, Grace said calmly. Gabriel's eyes narrowed slightly. He panicked. He betrayed you, Daniel snapped. Gabriel smiled faintly. Betrayal implies emotion. Grace stepped closer to the desk. You framed Daniel. You manipulated him. You destabilized our company. Gabriel tilted his head. And yet you're still standing. Daniel's fists clenched. Why attack her personally? Gabriel's gaze shifted to Grace. Because she's the architect. The room fell silent. You didn't crumble after the crash, Gabriel continued. You calculated. You reorganized. You traced accounts I spent years burying. Grace didn't blink. You miscalculated my priorities. Gabriel walked slowly around his desk. No, he corrected softly. I adjusted them. Daniel's voice grew sharper. Enough. This ends now. Gabriel laughed quietly. You still think you're in control? Grace stepped in before Daniel could speak. You wanted Hale Enterprises destabilized. You wanted Daniel legally compromised. Yes. And now that you've failed, Gabriel's voice lowered. I removed the leverage. Daniel stiffened. What does that mean? Gabriel looked at Grace. It means I stopped playing chess. That night, Daniel's phone rang. Private number. He answered. Silence. Then a soft voice. Come alone. Daniel's expression changed immediately. Grace noticed. What? He didn't answer. Daniel. He ended the call slowly. That was him. And he wants to meet. Grace's eyes narrowed. Where? Daniel hesitated. A warehouse on Pier 9. She went still. And you're not going alone, she said firmly. He said, I don't care what he said. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. He's not after me anymore, Grace. The words hung heavy. He's after you. Silence. Daniel's voice dropped. He thinks you're the threat. Grace swallowed slowly. Then we face him together. No, she blinked. No? Daniel stepped closer. This started because I was weak, because I let myself be manipulated. You're not going alone. Yes, I am. Her eyes flashed. You don't get to protect me after trying to kill me. He flinched. I know. Then don't pretend this is noble. It's not noble, he said sharply. It's necessary. Grace stepped into his space. If you walk into that warehouse without me, what? He challenged. Her voice trembled with fury. I will never forgive you. The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel looked at her like he was memorizing her face. You don't forgive me now. That's different. How? Because you're still here. His voice softened. I almost lost you once. Her chest tightened. You did. And I've lived with that every second. Grace's anger flickered. Not gone, but shaken. You think dying fixes that? She demanded. I think keeping you alive does. Her breathing grew uneven. This isn't protection, she whispered. This is guilt. Daniel didn't deny it. Yes. The honesty hurt more than anything. Grace's voice dropped. You don't get to die for redemption. His jaw tightened. Watch me. Pier 9 smelled like salt and rust. Grace followed him anyway. Of course she did. She stayed far enough back to remain unseen. Daniel walked into the warehouse alone. Gabriel stood in the center of the empty space. You came, Gabriel said calmly. Daniel didn't respond. You're predictable when emotional. Gabriel continued. Daniel's voice was steady. You attacked my wife. Gabriel smiled faintly. She attacked first. She exposed you. She embarrassed me. Daniel stepped closer. So this is pride? Gabriel's eyes hardened. This is legacy. Daniel laughed bitterly. You sound like my father. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Your father destroyed everything I built. And you think destroying me balances it? No, Gabriel said quietly. It weakens the foundation. Daniel's eyes narrowed. You still don't understand. Gabriel stepped closer. Enlighten me. You lost because you couldn't adapt, Daniel said. My father outplayed you because he was ruthless. Gabriel's expression darkened. And you aren't? Daniel's voice grew colder. No. Gabriel studied him. That's your weakness. No, Daniel replied quietly. It's my choice. Before Gabriel could respond, Grace stepped into the open. Then let me make one too. Both men turned sharply. Daniel's eyes filled with anger and fear. I told you to stay back. And I told you I wouldn't. Gabriel smiled slowly. There she is. Grace walked forward without hesitation. You think fear makes me fragile, she said calmly. Gabriel's gaze sharpened. It makes everyone fragile. Not me. Daniel moved slightly in front of her. She pushed him aside gently. Stop trying to shield me. Gabriel watched them carefully. You're stronger together, he admitted softly. Yes, Grace replied. And that's what terrifies you. Gabriel's voice dropped. I'm not afraid. Grace's eyes burned. You attacked my home because you lost control. Silence. You manipulated Daniel because you thought he was the weak link. Gabriel didn't respond. You were wrong. Daniel looked at her. Grace continued. He's flawed, emotional, impulsive. Daniel stiffened. But he's not corrupt. Gabriel's lips curved slightly. And you are? Grace stepped even closer. I'm strategic. The air felt electric. Gabriel lowered his voice. If I can't control Hale Enterprises, he glanced between them, I can destroy it. Daniel's fists clenched. Grace's voice turned icy. You won't get the chance. Gabriel's smile faded. You underestimate how far I'm willing to go. Grace didn't blink. Try me. The silence stretched. Then Gabriel said quietly, one of you won't survive this. Daniel stepped forward. Then make it me. Grace's head snapped toward him. Don't. Gabriel watched the exchange with interest. There it is, he murmured. The crack. Grace turned back to him, voice sharp. There is no crack. Gabriel studied them both. Then slowly he smiled. We'll see. He walked away without another word. The echo of his footsteps lingered long after he disappeared. Outside, the wind was fierce. Daniel turned to Grace. You disobeyed me. You don't command me. His voice broke slightly. I was trying to protect you. And I was trying to stand beside you. Silence. The tension wasn't anger anymore. It was something rawer. You think I'm still that man, he said quietly, the one who drove off that bridge. Grace met his gaze. I think you're fighting him. And if I lose, she stepped closer. Then I won't. His breath caught. You'd stop me? Yes. How? Her voice was steady by becoming worse. He stared at her. You scare me. She didn't smile. Good. Because in the distance, sirens were growing louder, and this war was about to explode beyond control. It happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary, quiet, deceptively calm. Grace had just left a board meeting. The headlines about Hale Enterprises were stabilizing. Marcus was officially under investigation. Gabriel was under scrutiny. For the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel suffocating. That was her mistake. Her phone buzzed as she stepped into the parking garage. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. She answered. Grace Hale. Silence. Then a voice she didn't recognize. Low. Controlled. If you scream, he dies. Her body went still. Who? A soft rustling sound. Then Daniel's voice, muffled, strained. Grace, don't. The sound of a sharp blow cut him off. Her heart stopped. Daniel, she shouted. The voice returned. You'll receive an address. Come alone, no police, no trackers. If we see anyone else, a pause. You already know he's capable of falling from high places. The line went dead. Grace didn't panic. She couldn't. Panic was a luxury. Her hands trembled only once, then steadied. Another message arrived, a location, an abandoned shipping yard outside the city. She inhaled slowly, then dialed one number. Victoria. Victoria answered on the second ring. You have nerve calling me. Grace's voice was ice. Where is he? A pause. I don't know what you're... Daniel's been taken. Silence. Real silence. Then Victoria's tone shifted. That wasn't me. Grace closed her eyes briefly. I know. Another pause. You think Gabriel? Just Victoria asked quietly. Yes. Victoria exhaled slowly. He's unraveling. No, Grace replied. He's cornered. And cornered men are dangerous. Grace's voice dropped. I need access to something. Victoria hesitated. You're asking me for help. I'm asking you if you want your brother alive. Silence stretched long enough to feel like betrayal again. Then, what do you need? Daniel was on his knees when he woke fully. Hands tied, face bruised, a warehouse, metal walls, echoes. Gabriel stood a few feet away, hands behind his back like a patient instructor. You look disappointed, Gabriel said calmly. Daniel spit blood onto the concrete. You're predictable. Gabriel smiled faintly. And you're impulsive. Daniel struggled against the restraints. This won't end the way you think. Gabriel stepped closer. I don't intend to end it cleanly. Daniel's jaw tightened. You attacked my wife? Gabriel's eyes darkened. She's the threat. No, Daniel said quietly. Guess she's the solution. Gabriel studied him. You love her. Yes. And she loves power. Daniel's voice hardened. She loves survival. Gabriel crouched down in front of him. And what are you willing to sacrifice for that survival? Daniel didn't hesitate. Everything. Gabriel smiled. Good. Grace arrived alone, or at least that's what it looked like. The shipping yard was silent except for the distant creak of metal containers shifting in the wind. She stepped forward slowly. Gabriel, her voice echoed. A door screeched open. Two men emerged. Behind them, Daniel, bruised, but alive. Her chest tightened, but she didn't show it. Gabriel stepped into view. You came. Of course I did. He tilted his head slightly. No police. You said no police. He studied her carefully. You surprise me every time. Grace's voice was steady. Release him. Gabriel shook his head slowly. Not yet. Daniel tried to stand straighter. Grace, don't. One of the men shoved him down. Just her hands clenched. What do you want? She demanded. Gabriel stepped closer. Control. Of the company? Yes. Then this isn't necessary. Gabriel's expression hardened. It is. Grace's voice sharpened. You're not after money. Gabriel didn't respond. You're after humiliation, she continued. You want Edward's legacy broken publicly. Silence. Daniel watched her carefully. Gabriel finally spoke. He destroyed everything I built. And you're doing the same to him, Grace replied. He's dead. No, she said softly. He's alive in that company, in Daniel. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Daniel is not Edward. No, Grace agreed. He's not ruthless enough. Daniel's eyes flickered toward her. Gabriel's voice lowered. And you are? Grace met his gaze without flinching. Yes. The air shifted. Gabriel stood fully upright. You're willing to trade? Yes. Daniel's head snapped toward her. No. Grace ignored him. Release him. And in return? She stepped forward. I sign over controlling shares. Daniel's voice broke. Grace, don't. She didn't look at him. Gabriel studied her. You'd give up everything you fought for? Grace's eyes never left his. For him? Yes. Silence stretched tight as wire. Gabriel searched her face for hesitation. He didn't find any. Interesting, he murmured. Daniel shook his head desperately. This is what he wants. Don't give him that. Grace finally looked at her husband. You once chose anger over us. His face fell. I'm choosing differently. The words hit him like a physical blow. Gabriel watched the exchange closely. You're making a mistake, Daniel said hoarsely. Grace's voice softened, just slightly. I already did once. I won't again. Gabriel signaled his men. They loosened Daniel's restraints but didn't release him. Sign first, Gabriel said calmly. A folder was brought forward. Grace flipped it open. Legal transfer of majority shares. Permanent. Irrevocable. Daniel's voice trembled. Grace, I tried to kill you. She didn't look up. I know. And you're still doing this? Yes. Why? She finally lifted her gaze to him. Because I won't let someone else decide how our story ends. Silence. Daniel's eyes filled with something he hadn't felt in weeks. Fear. Not for himself. For her. Gabriel stepped closer. Sign. Grace picked up the pen and paused, long enough to make everyone tense. Then she said quietly, You really think I came unprepared? Gabriel's eyes narrowed. What did you do? Grace smiled faintly. You taught me something valuable, which is, never walk into a room without leverage. Sirens erupted in the distance. Loud. Close. Gabriel's head snapped toward the sound. You said no police, he said sharply. I didn't call them, Grace replied calmly. More vehicles, engines, footsteps. Victoria stepped into view from behind a container, holding a phone. You're not the only one who can form alliances, she said coolly. Gabriel's face darkened. You betrayed me. Victoria shrugged. You were losing. Daniel stared at his sister. You helped? Victoria looked at him. Don't make me regret it. Armed officers flooded the yard. Gabriel backed away slowly. You think this ends here? He asked quietly. Grace stepped closer. No, she said. It ends with you. Gabriel's eyes locked onto hers. Be careful, Grace. You're becoming the very thing you hate. She didn't flinch. Maybe. He was taken into custody moments later. Struggling. Furious. But defeated. Silence returned slowly. Daniel stood in front of Grace. Free. Alive. Bruised. You were going to give him everything, he said quietly. Yes. Even after what I did? She held his gaze. Yes. Why? Her voice was steady. Because loving someone doesn't mean forgetting their worst moment. His throat tightened. It means deciding whether they deserve another chance. He stepped closer. And do I? Grace looked at him for a long moment. I don't know. The honesty hurt more than rejection. But you proved something tonight, she continued. What? That you'd sacrifice yourself. Daniel swallowed. I thought you deserved better. She stepped closer. Then become better. He reached for her slowly. This time, she didn't pull away. But she didn't fully lean in either, somewhere between distance and forgiveness, between anger and hope. Victoria watched them briefly before turning away. This isn't over, she muttered. Grace heard her. No, she agreed softly, because empires don't collapse in one night, and marriages don't heal in one rescue. But for the first time, they weren't breaking, they were choosing, and that choice would define what came next. The silence after war is never peaceful. It's hollow. 3 weeks after Gabriel's arrest, the city felt calm again. News cycles moved on, Hale Enterprises stabilized, investors regained cautious confidence. But inside the Hale estate, nothing was calm. Grace stood alone in the study, staring at Edward Hale's portrait again. You planned everything, she murmured softly, even after you died. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching her. You talked to him a lot lately. She didn't turn around. I'm trying to understand him. And I'm starting to. Daniel stepped inside. That worries me. Grace finally faced him. It should. Silence stretched between them. Their marriage wasn't broken anymore. But it wasn't healed either. It existed in a fragile, tense middle ground. "You've been distant," Daniel said quietly. Grace folded her arms. "I've been thinking." "About leaving?" The question hit harder than he intended. Her eyes flickered. "About staying," he exhaled slowly. "What does that depend on?" She held his gaze. "Truth." He stiffened slightly. "I've told you everything." "Not everything." Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about?" Grace walked toward the desk and opened a folder. Inside were documents she hadn't shown him yet. Transfers, approvals, signatures. "Gabriel wasn't the only one who manipulated the company," she said calmly. Daniel's stomach tightened. "What did you find?" She slid the papers toward him. "Before Marcus, before the merger." Daniel scanned the first page. His expression shifted. "No," Grace's voice was quiet. "You authorized a private liquidation fund." His breathing slowed. "That was years ago. You moved company assets into a shadow portfolio. For expansion capital," he snapped. "Without board approval." Daniel looked away. "It was temporary." "Was it?" she asked softly. Silence. His jaw tightened. "You think I was stealing from my own company?" "I think," Grace said carefully, "you were trying to prove something." He looked up sharply. "Prove what?" "That you weren't your father." The words hung heavy in the room. Daniel's voice dropped. "You don't understand what it was like growing up under him." "Then tell me," she challenged quietly. For a moment he didn't answer. Then he did. "He never trusted me," Daniel said. "Every decision I made, he second-guessed. Every risk, he criticized." Grace stayed silent. "I moved the funds because I wanted independence," he continued. "I wanted one move that was mine. And when it failed," she asked gently. His voice hardened. "I covered it." Grace's chest tightened. "You hid it?" "Yes." "And Marcus knew." Daniel closed his eyes. "Yes." The realization settled. Marcus hadn't just framed him. He'd had leverage. Real leverage. "You weren't just manipulated," Grace said slowly. "You were vulnerable." Daniel's shoulders sagged slightly. "I was ashamed." Grace studied him. "Why didn't you tell me?" His answer was immediate. "Because I thought you'd see me as weak." She inhaled slowly. "I already saw you as human." The silence that followed wasn't angry, it was raw. Daniel stepped closer. "You're not innocent either, are you?" Her eyes darkened. "No," he swallowed. "What did you hide?" Grace walked back to the desk and opened another drawer. From it, she pulled a sealed envelope, old. Unopened, she handed it to him. He stared at it. "What is this?" "Open it." Daniel tore the seal. Inside was a letter. Edward Hale's handwriting. He read silently at first, then slower. Then his hands began to shake. "He knew," Daniel whispered. Grace didn't speak. "He knew about the shadow portfolio." "Yes." Daniel looked up at her. "He never confronted me." "He didn't need to." Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "He changed the company's succession clause." Grace nodded once at her. "Control doesn't automatically pass to you." The room felt suddenly smaller. "It passes to..." Daniel's voice trailed off. He looked at her. Grace didn't look away. "Joint executive authority," she said calmly. "With you." Daniel's mind raced. "He put you in line before he died." "Yes." Silence. "And you didn't tell me." "No." His chest rose and fell heavily. "You let me think I was in control." Grace's voice remained steady. "You needed to believe that." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "So I was never fully CEO." "You were," she replied quietly, "but not alone." He ran a hand through his hair. "All this time, you had legal power over me." "I had legal balance," she corrected. "And you kept that from me." "Yes." "Why?" Her answer was immediate. "Because you weren't ready." The truth cut deeper than accusation. Daniel stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Did you ever trust me?" She didn't answer right away. "That's not fair," he said. "Trust isn't blind," she replied softly. "It's built." "And you never built it?" he demanded. "You nearly killed me." The words landed like thunder. Silence. Daniel stepped back slowly. "I thought we were past that." "We are," she said quietly, "but scars don't disappear." He looked down at the letter again. "My father trusted you more than me." Grace's voice softened. "He trusted me to protect what he built." "And what about protecting me?" Daniel asked. The vulnerability in his voice was unmistakable. Grace hesitated, then answered honestly. "I didn't know if you wanted protection." The silence stretched long and heavy. Finally, Daniel asked, "If I had died in that crash, would you have taken control?" Grace's eyes didn't waver. "Yes." The honesty was brutal. "You wouldn't have walked away?" "No." He let out a slow breath. "You would have fought?" "Yes." "For me?" "For the company," she said first, then added, "and for us." Daniel looked at her carefully. Do you love me, he asked quietly, or do you love what we built? Grace stepped closer. Both. That's not comforting. It's honest. Silence, then his voice lowered. If I fail again, will you replace me? Her gaze sharpened slightly. If you betray us again, yes. He flinched. But if you fight beside me? She stepped close enough that their foreheads nearly touched. I don't need to replace you. The tension between them wasn't anger. It was gravity. Pulling. Heavy. Complicated. Gabriel said something before he was taken, Daniel said quietly. What? He said one of us wouldn't survive this. Grace's eyes hardened. He underestimated us. Daniel studied her. Or he knew something we don't. Later that night, Grace stood alone in the hallway outside the guest room. Daniel had moved back into their bedroom, but something still felt unfinished. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again, she stared at it before answering. Yes. A familiar voice responded. Not Gabriel. Not Marcus. Victoria. He's talking, Victoria said quietly. Gabriel? Yes. Grace's pulse slowed. What did he say? Victoria hesitated. He claims there's one more file. Grace's voice dropped. What file? A contingency. For what? For if he failed. Silence. And? Grace pressed. Victoria's tone grew uneasy. He said it doesn't target the company. Grace's heart thudded once. Then what? Another pause. It targets you. The air left Grace's lungs slowly. How? I don't know yet. Grace ended the call and stood there in the dark hallway, targeting her. Not the company. Not Daniel. Her. For the first time since the crash, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Fear. Because war over power was one thing, but personal destruction? That was different. Daniel appeared behind her. You're pale. She turned slowly. Gabriel left something behind. Daniel's jaw tightened. What? Grace held his gaze. I don't know. And that scares you? Her voice was quiet. Yes. He stepped closer. We'll face it. She searched his face. Together? Yes. Grace studied him long enough to measure sincerity. Then she nodded once. But deep inside, she knew something he didn't. Gabriel hadn't been targeting her intelligence or her ambition. He'd been studying something else, something older, something buried. And if that file came out, it wouldn't just threaten the company. It would threaten who she really was. The file arrived without warning. No courier, no email, no digital trace. Just a plain brown envelope sitting on the kitchen counter when Grace walked downstairs at 6:12 a.m. Daniel was still asleep. She knew she hadn't left it there. Her pulse slowed instead of quickened. Gabriel. She walked toward it carefully as if it might explode. On the front, for Daniel. Not for her. For him. That was deliberate. She stared at it for a long time before touching it. Then, Grace? Daniel's voice behind her. She didn't turn around. There's something you need to see. He stepped closer. What is it? She handed him the envelope without speaking. He frowned at the label. From who? Open it. He tore it open carefully. Inside, a file, photographs, a birth certificate, court documents, and a name. Not Grace Hale, not Grace Thompson, but Elena Marrow. Daniel frowned. What is this? Grace didn't answer. He looked at her slowly. Grace? Her voice was quiet. That was my name. The silence was immediate, heavy. You changed your name? He asked slowly. Yes. Why? She looked at the floor for a brief second before lifting her gaze again. Because Grace Hale doesn't come from where Elena Marrow came from. Daniel flipped through the documents, juvenile court records, financial fraud, a sealed case. His eyes darkened. You were arrested. Yes. For embezzlement. She didn't flinch. Yes. The word echoed between them. Daniel's voice dropped. How old were you? 20. His mind raced. You told me you worked your way through law school. I did. You said you interned at a private firm. I did. You never said. I had a record. The air shifted. Daniel set the file down slowly. Gabriel found this. Yes, and you didn't tell me. No. Why? He demanded, hurt slipping into his voice. Grace stepped back slightly. Because that part of me was buried. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Gray. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. You built our entire life on reinvention. Yes. And you never trusted me enough to tell me? Her eyes sharpened slightly. You tried to kill me. That was after, he shot back. She flinched. Barely. I was going to tell you, she said quietly. When? When I felt safe. The word hit him hard. You never felt safe with me? I did, she replied immediately. But safety isn't permanent. Daniel stared at her. Who were you before all this? She took a slow breath. Elena grew up in foster care. No inheritance, no connections, no protection. And when an opportunity came to work for a small financial firm, I took it. He listened carefully. They were moving money illegally. I didn't know at first. And when you found out, I stayed. Silence. Daniel's jaw tightened. You participated. Yes. For how long? 6 months. Why? Her voice hardened. Because poverty is louder than morality. The words hit him deeply. I got caught, she continued. The firm collapsed. I took a plea deal, cooperated. You testified. Yes. And then I rebuilt. She met his eyes directly. I changed my name legally, went to school, graduated top of my class. You targeted my company? He asked quietly. No. You just happened to meet me? Yes. Daniel searched her face for deception. He didn't find any. But your father knew, she added softly. Daniel blinked. What? He knew about Alina Marrow. How? He ran a background check when we started dating. Daniel's chest tightened. And he still approved? He respected survival, she said calmly. Silence. He told me something once, she continued. What? He said, people who rise from nothing protect everything. Daniel swallowed. And do you? Yes. The silence stretched painfully. Daniel looked at the file again. Gabriel thinks this ruins you. Grace nodded slightly. For the board, for the media. Does it? She inhaled slowly. It complicates things. Daniel's voice turned sharp. You should have told me, and you should have trusted me. The words collided. Silence again. He stepped closer. Did you ever manipulate me? He asked quietly. No. Did you ever marry me for power? No. Did you ever love me? Her voice softened. Yes. Do you still? The question lingered, longer than the others. She looked at him carefully. Yes. His shoulders lowered slightly. But, she added softly, love doesn't erase fear. His expression shifted. You're still afraid of me. I'm afraid of losing control, she corrected. To me? To anyone. Daniel's voice dropped. You don't want a husband. I want a partner. And I wasn't. Not before, she said honestly. Silence filled the kitchen. Then Daniel asked something quieter. Did you ever think I'd leave if I knew? She didn't hesitate. Yes. And that mattered more than honesty? It mattered more than vulnerability. He absorbed that slowly. You survived by hiding. Yes. And now? She met his gaze steadily. Now I'm done hiding. He picked up the file again. What does Gabriel intend to do with this? Grace's voice turned colder. He'll leak it. When? When he needs leverage. Daniel exhaled slowly. Then we move first. She studied him. What do you mean? We tell the board. She blinked. Voluntarily? Yes. Her pulse quickened. That could destabilize everything. He stepped closer. So could secrecy. Silence. You're willing to risk the company for me? She asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. Yes. The word hit her harder than she expected. You once risked me for the company, she whispered. He flinched. I know. And now I choose you. The air shifted again, different this time. Less sharp, more raw. You don't owe me that, she said softly. I do, he replied. Not because of guilt, because of growth. She searched his face. You mean that? Yes. Another silence. Then a slow nod from her. Then we control the narrative, she said calmly. He almost smiled. There's the strategist, she stepped closer. And there's the man I married. He hesitated. You're not angry? I am. At me? At myself. For what? For thinking I had to be perfect to deserve this life. Daniel's voice softened. You didn't. She looked at him carefully. You don't know that. He stepped closer until there was barely space between them. I do. Her breath hitched slightly. Why? Because you survived things I never had to. Silence. And you still chose me. Her voice dropped. Don't make me regret that. He almost smiled. I won't. But neither of them noticed, outside the house, a black car parked quietly across the street, watching. Because Gabriel wasn't finished. The file was only the beginning, and someone else, someone who knew Alina Marrow, was about to step into the light. The boardroom doors slammed open before Grace could even knock. All 12 members were already seated. Daniel stood at the head of the table. Gabriel sat at the far end. And beside him, a man Grace hadn't seen in 15 years. Her lungs tightened. Marcus Vale, older, sharper, colder. The man who had recruited Alina Marrow into fraud. The man who walked away untouched. Gabriel smiled faintly. Grace, he said smoothly. Or should I say, Alina. The room shifted. Whispers. Eyes turning. Hayes? Daniel didn't look at her. He was staring at Marcus. You said he was in prison, Daniel muttered quietly. Grace's voice was steady. He was supposed to be. Marcus leaned back in his chair casually. I was, he replied, for a year. Plea deals are miraculous things. Grace stepped fully into the room. You disappeared. I evolved, Marcus corrected his. Gabriel folded his hands. Gentlemen and ladies, he said to the board, before you vote on the future of this company, I believe you deserve transparency. Daniel's jaw tightened. We were going to disclose, but you didn't, Gabriel interrupted calmly. He slid copies of the file across the table. Grace didn't move. She didn't beg. She didn't flinch. One of the board members looked up sharply. You committed financial fraud. Yes, Grace answered before Gabriel could speak. Silence fell. Marcus smiled faintly. That's not the full story, he said lightly. Grace's gaze cut to him. Then tell it, Tef, she said coldly. Marcus stood. Miss Merrow was not simply an employee. She designed the routing structure. A murmur rippled across the table. Daniel's eyes snapped toward her. That's not true, he said quietly. Grace's voice didn't waver. I optimized a system I didn't fully understand at the time. Marcus chuckled softly. She understood perfectly. Daniel's chest tightened. Did you? He asked her. Grace met his eyes. Yes. The word shattered something invisible in the room. Theft, Gabriel smiled. Thank you for your honesty. Grace stepped forward. But I was 20 and desperate. Marcus shrugged. You were brilliant. She turned toward him. And you exploited that. No. Marcus replied coolly. You volunteered. The tension thickened. Daniel slammed his hand lightly on the table. Enough. Everyone froze. He turned slowly to Grace. Did you steal? Yes. Did you regret it? Yes. Did you testify? Yes. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. Grace continued calmly. Yes, I testified against every executive involved, including him. She pointed at Marcus. He promised protection, she continued, promised opportunity, promised mentorship. She stepped closer to him. He never mentioned prison. Marcus's expression hardened. You were ambitious. I was hungry. Their eyes locked. Gabriel interrupted smoothly. And now she's CEO of your company. Silence. Daniel looked at the board. Yes, he said firmly, and she will remain so. Gabriel laughed lightly. After this, Daniel turned slowly toward him. You tried to kill her. The room went still. Gabriel didn't blink. That's an accusation. It's a fact, Daniel replied. Grace's pulse quickened. Daniel stepped around the table slowly. You orchestrated a brake failure. You manipulated stock transfers. You bribed an investigator. Gasps. Gabriel's voice stayed smooth. Careful. Daniel's voice sharpened. I have proof. Grace's head snapped toward him. You what? He looked at her briefly. I've been building a case. Gabriel's smile faltered slightly. You're bluffing. Daniel shook his head. I'm done choosing power over truth. Silence. Daniel turned to the board. I knew about Grace's past before this meeting. Grace looked at him sharply. You did? Yes. Her breath caught. And I chose to disclose it today. Gabriel's face darkened. You planned this. Daniel's voice lowered. You underestimated me. He slid a second folder onto the table. Forensic audit. Wire transfers linked to Gabriel. Offshore accounts. Marcus's release funded anonymously. The board erupted. Marcus stood abruptly. This is absurd. It's documented, Daniel cut in. Grace watched him carefully. You knew, she whispered. Yes. For how long? 3 weeks. Her chest tightened. You investigated me? I investigated Gabriel, he corrected. Silence stretched. You didn't confront me. I wanted you to tell me. Her eyes shimmered slightly. I was afraid. He stepped closer. I know. She studied him carefully. You chose me. Yes. Why? Because I almost lost you once. Her breath trembled slightly. You did, and it broke me. The words were raw, honest. Grace stepped closer. You tried to control everything, she whispered. I know. You almost destroyed us. I know. And now? Now I'd rather lose power than lose you. Her composure cracked for the first time. A tear slid down her cheek. You should have said that sooner. I was arrogant. And now, I'm learning. She laughed softly through tears. You're terrible at emotional timing. He almost smiled. I'm trying. She stepped into him slowly. He wrapped his arms around her, not controlling, not dominant, just holding. You don't have to be Elena anymore, he whispered. She closed her eyes. I never stopped being her. He nodded. Then let's build with all of you. Footsteps echoed behind them. The board chairman approached. We've reached a decision. They separated slowly, but Grace stood straight. Daniel's hand brushed hers. The chairman spoke clearly. Grace Hale will remain CEO. Silence. But with oversight conditions for the next fiscal year. Grace nodded calmly. Accepted. Daniel exhaled slowly. And Mr. Hale, the chairman added, your transparency prevented catastrophe. Daniel gave a short nod. The chairman walked away. Grace looked at Daniel. It's not over. No, he agreed softly. But it's ours. She studied him. You tried to kill me, she said quietly. He met her eyes. Yes, and now you saved me. Yes. Silence. What are we? She asked. He stepped closer. Two broken people who refused to stay broken. Her lips curved faintly. That's not romantic. It's honest. She leaned into him slightly. Good. He touched her face gently. No more secrets. No more power games. No more choosing control over love, he nodded. And if I ever forget, she looked at him steadily, I'll remind you. Their foreheads touched. Fire doesn't forget, it transforms. They walked out of the building together, not as enemies, not as rulers, but as survivors. And somewhere far away, Gabriel watched the news coverage. Grace Hale, CEO, survivor, victor. His jaw tightened. The war was over, but Grace had won because she understood something he never did. Revenge burns hot, but redemption burns longer. What did you learn from Grace and Daniel's story? Was it about betrayal? About power? About forgiveness? About the price of ambition? Do you believe love can survive betrayal? Or do some wounds never fully heal? Tell us in the comment section what lesson stayed with you the most. If this story moved you, shocked you, or kept you on edge, please like, share, and subscribe for more intense stories full of drama, passion, betrayal, and redemption. Your support keeps the fire burning. See you in the next story.